Good afternoon, my renegades. Welcome back to Rogue Radio. My name is Sarah Jane, and today is another episode of the P3Do-Files from the series of Quiet on Set. Now, I will give you all a trigger warning. This one is a bit more intense than the last one. There is going to be a lot of graphic things in here, kind of dotted into the script, because when I was writing the script, for one, it took the whole shift because I was working on this while I was at work, and so when I started writing the script, there was a lot of terrible things that these people ended up saying about the staff and the people there at Nickelodeon and what they did. So if you are easily triggered by pedophilia or any type of SA, please feel free to turn off the podcast at all or at any time. I will not feel bad. I just want you all to feel safe. I do these types of podcast episodes. I do the pedophiles because I care about you children. I want you all to be informed, and I just don't feel like we should all turn a blind eye to this issue, and that's why. So if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to leave a comment. If you have a question, you can always contact me on the links in the description below of this YouTube video. Thank you. Okay, last episode I talked about the female discrimination that went on in the writer's room with Dan Schneider, and now we will be going into the second episode of Quiet on Set. One mother talks about the experience her daughter had on set of the Amanda Show. Her daughter, Brandy, was always full of life and happy, and she had a dream of becoming an actress. She was booked on the Amanda Show, which is a show that she was enamored with at the time. She gets to be an extra in a classroom scene on set. As parents, for some reason, they were not allowed on set, so they were greeted by Jason Handy, who was a production assistant. His job was to lead the kids to where they needed to go and keep track of them. He was described as charming and an all-American boy next door sort of person. When he wasn't on set, he was talking with the moms to get familiar with them, asking about their families, and, just to make them feel secure in any conversation that he ends up talking. He's just being friendly. Brandy was so excited after her day on set, and she told her mom that her and Jason exchanged phone numbers. Mind you, she's 11 years old. And Jason wanted her and him to start emailing. Innocent, right? And her mom genuinely thought that she had made a friend on set and didn't really think much of it. A week after she was on the episode, she had gotten an email from Jason, and she let her mom read it. Excuse me. It seemed like a very innocent email talking about all the shows that he'd been working on, and from that point on, they would email back and forth. And since the contents of the email seemed to be just them updating each other, her mother didn't think anything of it. A couple months later, Brandy was on the computer, and all of a sudden she abruptly got up from the computer, shut off the PC completely, slamming the door to her bedroom. And her mother, that was out of character, her mother ended up talking to her, came into her room, and asked what was going on. And that's when Brandy started to cry. She said, "I got an email from Jason. It was a picture of him nude. Let's just say he was relieving himself in this picture. I gotta try to make sure that the words I say in this episode doesn't get this episode banned on YouTube. So any adult knows what I'm talking about. And he said that he sent it to her because he was thinking of her. That's disgusting. Her mother was automatically conflicted on what to do, and she wanted to call the police, but she also didn't want to be looked at as a bad mother who let all of this happen. She decided not to call the police, but she did decide from now on to keep her away from Jason. She didn't want to lose her child in the situation, and so she did what she thought she had to do as a mother. Ultimately, Brandy left the show business and never returned. The deep predilections that infest Hollywood is unimaginable. Most of the children in this show, or in show business, experience some type of predatory behavior. Unfortunately, this has been the norm in Hollywood since the 1920s. We know that Shirley Temple experienced abuse as a child, being in baby burlesque films when she was a baby, like a child. My goodness. I want to say she was 5 or 3 when she ended up doing stuff like that. Judy Garland was raped and abused on the set of The Wizard of Oz. Just because it's been adopted as the norm since the Gilded Age doesn't mean that it's okay, obviously. The reason why predatory behavior is prevalent in the celebrity world is because of the amount of power these powerful men and women have over actors, especially children actors. There's also the blackmail, threatening, and coercion into staying silent. And these children keep silent most of the time because they fear that they won't be believed. The lines blurred in the industry are just terrible. Anyway, there are very few parents who will ever leave their children unattended, but those predators can also be very persuasive. Some producers, coaches, and directors will make an excuse to have their children stay the night under the guise of working on scripts or lines or acting, all of that. And as we go on into the series, you will hear about a first-hand account of this type of situation. Once the child is in the industry, they are treated like adults and isolated from their own parents. The casting couch is a very big indicator of finding out whether or not a child in general, or a general actor, is docile enough to agree to sexual acts. And in exchange, for the big break. It's like, you scratch my bag, I scratch yours, sort of thing. More like, if you scratch my itch, I'll help you achieve your dream. It should never be this way, especially for children who are very easily impressionable and innocent. It shouldn't happen this way, but it does. It does, and anyone who wants their kid in show business, never leave your kid alone. Ever. The casting couch. Okay, let me see. There have been pieces of legislation that are cracking down on the victimization of children, and it's a start, but I hope to see much more results in the future. And now we're gonna go on to Amanda Bynes. We already know that she's gone through a lot, and I don't know, hopefully, she starts sharing her story about what happened to her. But Amanda Bynes has been a household name in the 90s and 2000s, and in my own opinion, she was a fantastic actress. And she was a part of my childhood growing up. I loved The Amanda Show, all that. What a Girl Wants, What I Like About You. The fangirling is strong with Amanda Bynes. And even though she isn't in the industry anymore, I still think that she's been a big influence on my life. When I started seeing that she was getting in trouble with the law, it broke my heart, because for the longest time I thought she was a very good role model for girls. We all fall from grace, celebrity or not, and it just saddened me that, you know, what her parents and Dan Schneider has done to her in the years for her being an actress up to becoming an adult. When Amanda left Nickelodeon and decided to start doing more roles as a blossoming young woman, Dan Schneider really wanted to follow her into the set of What I Like About You. And he had a very specific vision on how he wanted the show to go. And him and Will Calhoun, the co-creator of the show, did not get along. The network didn't really trust Dan, and he got pushed out of the writer's room. Dan denies this claim of being pushed out from the writer's room and claims that he has focused on producing like another show at the time. Somehow, he was still able to be the producer because the credits always say Dan Schneider helped produce this. Stuff like that. And he was still able to be on set with Amanda, and he thought that he should be the one to usher Amanda into adulthood. Amanda, as she was striving for adulthood, had cables tied to her back called her parents, who were pulling her down. She lived with her parents, and they had strict rules for her. She was dating someone older at the time when she was 16, and her parents, of course, told her that it wasn't okay, so she runs away. I have so much to say about Amanda's parents, and keep in mind that some may be alleged, but with that in mind, before I say these things, some of it may or may not be true, and some of it has been proven true. So, we all know that Amanda has been in a conservatorship and just escaped it. Her father vicariously lived through his daughter and made sure that she was always on set working with Dan all of the time. Her mother gave her body image issues because she was prone to gain weight. On the set of Love Wrecked, she had gotten sick, and her mother was finally pleased with how much weight she lost. I think she said that she was like 100 pounds around that time, and her mom just thought that she was beautiful after she got sick, which is twisted. Like, why the heck would you do that to your daughter? Anyway, there's a blind item that came up on a website where celebs can go ahead and go through this website to confess what's been done to them, and one post rang a bell for the viewers of this website. This anonymous actress confessed that she was victimized by Dan to where she doesn't think that she can ever have children and have the family that she dreams of. The only clue we have in this message, knowing that it may be Amanda, and her claim that it was Dan, was the cryptic message inside of this text saying that Dan did it. She had a Twitter account that was proven to be fake, called Ashley Banks. So when I say that it was proven wrong, honestly, a YouTuber actually upped the brightness on one of the selfies on this Ashley Banks Twitter page and saw that it wasn't actually Amanda Bynes. So yeah, hang on. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's fake, but she's also kind of posted a picture of her driver's license and a selfie of her as well. But let's just say allegedly it could be fake. But in my opinion, I thought it was fake. But anyway, just letting you know, I could be wrong. But the alleged Twitter account she says, and she starts tweeting that there were people that she worked with in the industry, like John Travolta victimizing men in his trailer. And we all know that she was on the set of Hairspray, so how would she know that? And John Travolta was on set as well, so anyway. On this fake account, she also claimed that she had an abortion at 13 years of age, which would link the Dan Did It post to this tweet, which technically would make it a little more factual because of what she said on this website. But then again, right now all of this is alleged. It could be true, it could be not. She was recorded saying that she wanted to kill her own father. We know that from TMZ, actually. And she was also committed into a psych ward. And, like I said, all this is alleged. We'll never really know the truth, unless Amanda ends up confessing and saying what she needs to say from her own mouth. But anyway, and there are many other things I cannot list because of the time limits on this episode. In the process of Amanda running away from home, she turns to Dan for help, and the details of Dan's involvement in this incident, is very cloudy. But we all know, that but all we know is that her parents were upset with Dan, and the police were involved as well. So her trust in Dan escalated to her and his, hang on. Excuse me, I just woke up, so sometimes I gotta take a break. Her trust in Dan escalated to her, and his representatives. So, like, she trusted Dan, 100% around this time, to help her get emancipated from her parents. And so she ends up getting caught in the middle of Dan, who is her producer / mentor, and her parents. And she's a teen, she's 16 years old, and it's a hard weight to carry, trying to be an adult alone, and also trying to make the right decision based on the people who you care about and love. The emancipation case is put to court, and it fails. After this, Amanda split from Dan and her parents, and Dan parts ways with What I Like About You, and only his name is on the credits as evidence of his involvement. He then turns back to Nickelodeon, and Nickelodeon, of course, welcomed him with open arms as producer. Dan Schneider started working on a brand new cast for All That, and his empire continued to build from there. It goes without saying that Dan had immense power on set over the kids and over the writer's room, since he was the main guy in charge in all the sets that he was in charge of. So, he did weave his threat of authority in the scripts and in the show. He had the All That cast. One episode, the show had the Dan phone, where he would call the cast from backstage, and the cast referring to him as a god. Like, can you imagine? I can't imagine. The former new cast of All That described the set as dysfunctional, asking the cast to work more hours, which is against child labor laws. The children on set had some very physical acts to perform on set, and one of the actors talks about a skit called Sugar and Coffee, where the kids ran around caffeinated by sugar and coffee. The taps hanging from the ceiling was literal sugar, and it had to be literal coffee. It was literal sugar as well, but And it was hitting their faces like sand. The sugar would congeal in their mouths like a goo. And it makes an image of something very sexual. If I can... The whole thing, when I saw it, it just looked very sexual. I was like... We all know what I'm talking about, so I won't say anything. It hangs from their mouths like snot. I mean, we'll call it snot right now. But we all know what I'm talking about. Any adult knows what I'm talking about. These sketches were very uncomfortable to the cast, and there was no question that Dan got off on it in some way. Like I said, the first episode, he most likely has a humiliation fetish as well as a foot fetish. A child foot fetish. Brian Hearn is involved in a sketch where he is being a Girl Scout and selling Girl Scout cookies. But he's selling the Girl Scout cookies like he's selling drugs. So not only is there a dysfunctional cast, like a dysfunctional set for the cast, physically draining, law-breaking, humiliating, but also there's some racial stuff going on. So when I get into this, you'll start realizing that the African American kids didn't really have it very well either. But he's selling these Girl Scout cookies like he's selling drugs. He also goes on to say that he didn't feel close to Dan at all. He also recalls a sketch where he is supposed to be the youngest rapper of all time, and he's in a nude suit. A nude suit is a bodysuit, usually spandex, that matches the skin tone of the person to make them appear naked. When he was getting fitted for the suit, someone said that the skin tone should be charcoal. Now, when I heard this term, I actually had to research if this was a racial slur, and it indeed is. I don't know if it was more prevalent at the time to be spoken about like as a racial slur. I only saw one website that actually listed this as a racial term, so I feel awful even saying that word, even though it's a regular word to me, but it could actually be offensive to someone who is African American in a certain situation. So I really hate that. For Brian Hearn, because he was a child. But when he hears this term, he kind of got teary-eyed. And when his makeup artist saw this, he sympathized with him and encouraged him to ignore the horrible comment. His mother was always on set with him, and she was always one to speak up when things didn't feel right. And good on his mom. Like, his mom should really get some recognition, because his mother actually saved him from some terrible things. She did call his agent, and his agent sort of guilt-tripped her and told her to just keep her mouth shut so her son could achieve his dreams. Dan came up with this kid version of Fear Factor, where the kids got traumatized for entertainment, called On Air Dare. I, unfortunately, remember watching Jamie Lynn Spears getting put in a tub, and she had to have raw egg yolk poured all over her as a dare. Brian Hearn was on this show, of course, and he had to be covered in peanut butter from head to toe. I think you guys know where I'm going with this. He had to lay on the floor and have dogs lick peanut butter off his body. I hate even saying that. Oh my god. And he's a child. He did have clothes on, of course. But the whole thing sounds so disgusting and predatory. Why would you even do something like this? Why? I do not remember seeing this episode, and I'm happy my child self didn't get to see something like this. And seeing it as an adult, my head was in my hands while I was watching this at work. It just puts a whole different light, if you can call it that. Like, what was being done to these kids? I cannot imagine the humiliation that Brian had experienced during this dare and how traumatizing it was for him as a kid. Can you imagine him, like, just walking the street saying, you know, having kids recognize him and laughing that he's the kid that had dogs, you know, lick peanut butter off his body? That's disgusting. That's terrible. This man has gone through so much. And honestly, the whole cast actually has gone through a lot, but focusing on Brian Hearn, it's just, damn. It pisses me off, and I'm not even a mom. I don't have a kid yet. But seeing kids being victimized like this, oh my god. Makes me angry. It really does. Watching this, like I said, made me uncomfortable. And from Brian's mouth, he said that it seemed like some sort of awkward fantasy from some freaky dude. And, like I said, the man has a humiliation fetish. Dan Schneider has a humiliation fetish. Which is probably why he ended up having Brian do this. And, the production not only tried to teach children, but also convinced the parents that this is the type of behavior that is normal and it absolutely should never be. It was hard to watch his castmates be essentially tortured. These cast members had to put scorpions in their mouths, submerged in worms, hung upside down so their whole body is submerged in weird substances. And this was all for entertainment. As Dan started to become intoxicated with power, he started to get more particular, more verbally abusive, and more demanding on set. When you are powerful enough to change the atmosphere in the room, I mean, people will disagree, but that is pure demonic. You can agree or disagree with me on that matter. It doesn't really matter to me. Dan would come down and scream and yell at the actors, and a few times he had to be told that he was creating an unhealthy work environment. Giovanni actually was called by Dan to be asked if she could defend him when the Quiet on Set came onto air. And she flat out told him that she was terrified of him. One of his former editors says that she would be working from 8 a.m. to midnight, editing the shows to Dan's liking, and she would always get the directions from the associate producers instead of Dan himself. At this time, Dan was starting to feel the pressure of trying to keep his numbers up with programs that were on at the time. His editor at the time was so exhausted and overworked that she collapsed, and she heard someone say, "How is the show going to get finished?" This kind woman, even though that she collapsed, she goes, I'll be back, don't worry." That's a terrible work environment. To feel like the whole weight of the show relies on her editing and no one else can like step into her shoes and do it while she recovers from the hospital. I wrote a script, so I won't veer off the topic, of course. They were more worried about the show than they were with her well-being. Dan had also promised her a job, and he gave it to someone else instead, and a man who had no experience at that. In that moment, she couldn't take it anymore, and so she left. And to be honest, I would too. I'd be somewhere else where somebody appreciated me, you know. The director, Virgil, at the time, was not on his game, and he was having some marital problems, and instead of Dan being understanding and having a talk with him, he would antagonize him and try to get him to quit. He ended up getting fired, a message relayed from someone else, and not Dan to his face. Virgil was described as someone who defended the cast, making sure that they were okay. Dan treated Brian Hearn with caution, giving him the side eye. His mother also thought, since that she was so protective of her son, as she should be, thought that she was the problem. They both went to New York expecting to go back to the show, and his agent told his mother that Brian would not be invited back to the show. Brian was around 13, 14 at the time, and he felt like he was part of the family with his castmates and the directors, and all of a sudden, he wasn't part of the family anymore. He was devastated. He didn't get to say goodbye to his castmates, and he blamed himself. He does go on to say that the protectiveness of his mother was probably the reason why he wasn't invited back. This tactic has been used in showbiz for so long. They demonize the natural instincts of the parents, and then they punish the child for it. And that's a gaslighting tactic, I feel like. That's just not okay to do. That result of him not going back to all that put a strain on him and his mother's relationship. Brian does say that he is going to therapy to overcome his issues, and his mother goes on to say that she had no idea that she was saving her son from worse things. I do see this personally as a blessing in disguise. His mother knew by her own instincts that something was wrong, and she saved her son from a lot more trauma that he could have gone through if he was invited back on the show. Jason Handy was arrested for child endangerment. We'll say that. We all know that this guy is a P3Do or a P3Do. We all know what that means because we're talking about the pedophiles. And Brandy's mother had gotten a call from the detective from the LA Police Department, and she wanted to talk to Brandy about Jason Handy. He was the production assistant, and he was always present around the kids. Lisa and Giovanni had Bible study on set with this nasty human. He would join them, and he appeared to be a genuine and goofy guy. Law enforcement was tipped off about Jason's behavior towards children. In 2003, they searched his home and found massive amounts of CP, 10,000 images of children, 1,768 images of girls in poses, 238 images of young girls in terrible poses, and 2 images of young girls in worse activity. I can't really talk about too much about this, just because I don't want YouTube to take down this video. And one of the CDs included 7 video files of minors engaged in explicit conduct. The officer found Ziploc bags of each one of the girls' names on it, and each bag has some kind of token, like a trophy that he had collected from these particular girls. The detective called Brandy's mother because they found a bag with Brandy's name on it. These were letters from her in that bag. Other bags contained more disgusting things, like a pair of undergarments from a 7-year-old girl. The detective also goes on to say that a lot of the parents didn't want to go through with the investigation, and they really needed to speak with Brandy about her experience. And her mother agreed because she wanted some sort of closure and justice for her daughter. Another disturbing thing that they had found in his home is one of his journals that descriptively described how he felt about these young girls. Mind you, these are very young girls from, one of them was 7 and Brandy was 11 when she met Jason Handy. It was a journal, and in this journal, it said, "I am a pedo full blown." I'm gonna be paraphrasing, of course. I have been giving into my desires for little girls these past few weeks. I even struggle on a daily basis on how I can find a victim to R word if I have to. Brandy had to go to court and testify against him. Another daughter was there to testify against Jason in the courtroom. Jason became friendly with this girl and even came to her house. This girl was a guest star on Cousin Skeeter, and he had come to her house to play video games in her room. This girl was only 9. And she had an absent father, and she was kissing him on the mouth 6 to 7 times a day. He thought that he could take it further with her and tried to do a French kiss. You guys know what that is. I'm trying to save you from the trigger words. And she got uncomfortable, and he apologized, and she ended up becoming less lovey-dovey from that point on. I am, of course, paraphrasing. He had told her not to tell her mother about the kisses, and he told her that he could get her on other shows. This is where the coercion comes in. If you do this for me, if you don't tell Mom what we did, I will reward you. Like, is she a dog? Stop it. That's what you do with pets, not with people. Anyway. Jason was sentenced to 6 years in jail on 2 felony counts and 1 misdemeanor involving 2 girls. One was a lewd act with a minor, and the other involved disturbing, harmful acts to a minor. Jason was arrested in April of 2003, just 4 months after another predator was arrested. Brian Peck, also known as Pickle Boy. Pickle Boy started to become a staple character in All That. I don't need to tell you that pickle is a term used for a certain body part, and it didn't help Brian Peck was openly gay, or he proclaims to be openly gay. I mean, you can be gay and not victimize kids, just to let you know. Brian worked closely with Dan as a dialogue coach, and he's usually seen on set helping the kids, and he got associated with Dan, and he started playing small roles in Good Burger and Kenan and Kel. That's how he started. Once again, just like Jason, he was a charming, funny guy and came off genuine. Giovanni recalls she used to walk on Brian's back to relieve like pain in his back. And now looking at it as an adult, she believes that was kind of weird behavior. And what people don't understand is that for one, it's the norm in Hollywood to treat kid actors like adults. These kids are on set for hours on end, and they get comfortable with the adults. Everyone went to Brian's house for a cookout, and the home was a little off. Despite the collection of comic books, vintage toys, and the Planet of the Apes shrine, there was a painting of a birthday clown holding balloons, and Brian was excited when someone asked about it. He flipped the painting over, and it said, "Brian, hope you like the painting. Best wishes, John Wayne Gacy." Okay. That painting was a self-portrait of John Wayne Gacy, a serial killer. I won't go into the details of this demented man because the one thing I do not cover on this podcast is murder. It is a miracle I can get through these episodes of the P3Do-Files for you all. I'll leave that topic to the people with a stronger stomach than me, but in short, this man killed many young men and boys. I mean, that's just putting it as short as I can. One of the actors who asked about the painting actually gathered the kids and the parents into the room and were shown this painting unashamedly. He presents the painting again. Brian presents this painting again, like it was some sort of prized possession. It was found that he had developed a pen pal relationship with this monster, and for whatever awful reason, and he kept a pile of his letters and photos of murderabilia in his nightstand next to his bed. That's disgusting. August of 2003, there was a table read, and Giovanni says that the energy was off. There were people the kids did not recognize, and after the reading, Dan asks for the removal of the parents in the table reading so that the new people, or the lawyers, could talk to the kids about something. Most of them assumed it was an announcement of some kind. Dan tells the kids that Brian isn't working to be on set anymore, and he asked if the kids had anything to say about, Brian's behavior. If there was a story of one of the kids were, victimized as well. This meeting happened after Brian Peck was arrested on 11 charges of child SA. Oral copulation, sodomy, penetration with an object. I cannot filter some of this stuff because I don't even know the code words for this stuff. Hiring a minor for underage pictures, and forcible penetration. He was coaching a child actor, and parents reported he had victimized this child. The kids on set had a hard time believing this because they were led to this false sense of security with Brian Peck. After Dan asked if the kids had already or had any experience with Brian, that they needed to share, these kids looked at each other wondering if one was going to break the ice about this issue. The lawyers left, and then the day was, went back to normal on set. All of the cast was wondering who this child actor was and who was victimized so viciously by Brian. It turns out to be the male actor Drake Bell. And that is all for the second episode of the P3Do-Files. Thank you so much for listening. Forgive me if I couldn't figure out ways to go around the whole dark details of what happened to these kids. Like I said, I'm usually the person that does not have a filter, and having a filter just seems terrible to me. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. I will see you in the trenches next time, and hopefully this episode stays up on YouTube for a while so you guys can get informed. Alright, bye.